Conflict is building around the globe. Alliances are changing. To understand these complexities requires knowledge of the past. Through examining media reports and on-site visits in Europe, a group of Hanover students have explored these issues deeply. Meet students who just returned from Europe, studying World War II and the journalists who covered it on this edition of In the Studio. War and conflict can be tough issues to discuss, but they impact our lives and futures in many ways. Welcome to In the Studio. In each episode, we learn more about activities, organizations, and individuals here at Hanover College. I'm Lindsey White. Today, we are a group of Hanover students who have been following in the footsteps of reporters in the European theater during World War II, learning about these conflicts, examining media reports, and practicing some journalistic techniques ourselves. I'm Lindsey. I'm a senior communication major at Hanover College. Joining me are fellow seniors, psychology major Alexia Schwerdtfeger and political science major Ellee Bruns. Welcome to In the Studio.
Hello.
Hey. My first question is, how would you make an American audience care about what is happening if it's from far away? Or how do you help guide an audience to empathize with the series of events at hand?
So when I stepped foot into the American cemetery in Normandy, I just felt like the air changed around me. There are over 9,000 soldiers buried there, and it's a massive cemetery, and it's just very impactful, and you can feel it in your soul. I remember our tour guide told us that the crosses in the cemetery face west towards home. And when he said that, I immediately started to tear up because it made me think of the fact, like, what if that were me? What if that were my friends and family in this situation? And the average age that we found out of the soldiers was 24 years old. I'm not far off from that age. People I know and love are not far off from that age. And having your life taken from you so short, in such a short amount of time, it's awful to think about. And it really makes you think and be thankful for the sacrifice that they made for you.
Mm-hmm. I also think about what happened at Omaha Beach. Connecting the facts of the history and the personal stories, it makes a huge difference when hearing and telling that story. And just knowing that there were thousands of young American soldiers, and like you said, our age, that fought and died even far away from home as they were. It really makes me feel the weight of their sacrifice that they gave. And seeing the rows of the white crosses at the American cemetery, it put it in perspective to me how many people actually sacrificed that day. And just telling these stories and putting those in perspective, it helps me understand that they were real people. Their names, their stories, they were there.
100%. I agree with both of you, and I had a very similar experience. I found that during our group visit to Omaha Beach, particularly, was really impactful to me. It was one of the first times during this trip where I realized how far away from home I was, because I empathized with being an American soldier there and being so far away from home and having to accept the high chance of death and that you are going to die away from your family and away from American soil. And I think that is a big part of how we empathize with Normandy and the events of D-Day today, is just having that general pride and that feeling of homesickness and the love for our country that we share. And I think that's just what keeps Americans in the loop, especially during this time in journalism, and helps us empathize with the events.
I totally agree.
I completely agree with you.
How does our past inform our present, and what parallels exist? What lessons can be learned from this?
For me personally, I noticed at Buchenwald is where I first saw a lot of parallels and just learned a lot about how the past influences the present. Buchenwald was very morbid and dark and really hard to stomach some parts of the tour. But I think making myself educated about what happened there, especially by being in the presence, is very different than a classroom setting, and I think has taught me a lot about the evils of propaganda and what can happen to an entire civilization when propaganda is used, just the disastrous effects of it. And when we visited the museum, I even saw quite a bit of parallels in propaganda that was used during the Nazi regime, mildly appearing in some events today. So I think if we want to have a bright and promising future, it is pertinent that we learn from our history first. And Buchenwald really taught that to me in the flesh.
I completely agree. I remember stepping foot onto Buchenwald, and it was a very similar experience. It was just different. I felt different. There was a point when a bunch of the group went into an area of the camp that I personally could not step foot into. It was too heavy. It was too hard, and it made me think about what is going on today in our world, and it made me think about the Germans also who listened to this propaganda. There was a sign outside that talked about the people and how they were brought in by the general and how they were forced to confront what was happening in their country. And they said they fell to their knees and they started sobbing, and they were like, we have no idea, we had no clue. But how could you not know? There were the floodlights from the camp that you could see from miles away. There was the smell of burning bodies that you could smell. There were people from the city and from the town coming to the camp to visit. There's no way that you couldn't know, and it makes me think about today when things are happening in our society. We cannot turn a blind eye. We know something is happening. 100%. We need to stand up and we need to say that, and we need to fight for those who are, less fortunate than us, those in minority groups, those who don't have a voice.
Yeah, Buchenwald really showed me that the warning signs and dangers of the dehumanizations and the unchecked power that was given to Hitler. And it was crazy to me how the camp wasn't even hidden. Like, it wasn't even put in the forest to be hidden away. It was visible to the ordinary citizens of Weimar. Like, it was just right there. And seeing the parallels in the world today of hate speech, it's really scary. It's really scary because the Holocaust didn't begin with the death camps. So I believe that Buchenwald needs to physically stay there because just the memory of it is not going to stay prominent.
I agree. The memory and just being there is so different than learning about it. And I think both of you really hit it on the nose with just the impact and how I think there's so much to learn from that experience.
So, what have you learned in this course that helps you evaluate media coverage of events related to war and conflict?
For me, reading Murrow's transcripts before even getting to the physical part of London, it really put into perspective for me how important it is to have real-time information from a credible source. And the power of his firsthand observations and clear and honest language that he showed us showed me that good journalism focuses on the people and not the politics of the time. And Murrow really put into perspective to value the truth told with the integrity that he showed.
London was definitely a turning point for me too with that question. Murrow, I loved reading his transcripts, and we talked a lot in class about how important it is to tell a story with your reporting. Of course, there's a lot of importance in, having statistics and being able to, be hard and truthful about what's happening. But I think the way that he paints a picture of what was happening, especially with the Blitz, our group tour in London and all of those sites, made me think a lot about Murrow's broadcasts. But I think his reporting style and just being on that tour and seeing London really taught me about the sacrifice that it takes to be in journalism. And not even with just the physical toll or the risk of danger, but the emotional toll. I mean, it's backbreaking to know all the things that he had witnessed and had to live through, and not only bear that himself, but to have to be responsible to share that with the world. So I've grown a lot of appreciation for journalism. I feel like I could speak for all of us when I say I did not realize beforehand how much goes in and how much of a labor of love it is to be a reporter. But Murrow was the best of the best, and I think he really exemplifies that to us.
I completely agree. So during an interview that we did in London, we talked to people from Shoreditch about the current climate and political state of the world, and this is what a woman in Shoreditch had to say.
Just like, it seems to be very turbulent, like with the whole gun violence and things like that, it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't really feel stable.
So in this clip, I asked her how she felt about the current political state, especially in America, and what was going on. And she talked about how she just felt that it was very diluted and there was conflict and infighting among places in America. And I think it's very important for people to cover this this conflict and this turmoil in places so that we can have the facts of what's going on, and that we can have this information so we can make more informed decisions, and that we can also, try and work to change these in this turmoil that as Americans I'm sure we're very all aware of, the turmoil and the infighting and everything that's going on in our country. And having this information readily available to us, I think that we can work to bridge these, disagreements within our country and work to do better as an entire whole.
Thank you guys so much for discussing with me. I had a blast chatting with you guys. But before we conclude, I must ask, could each of you share your favorite experiences in Europe, or maybe what you've learned the most about?
I really enjoyed the food. The food was my favorite part, being able to experience what each country even expresses themselves in food and the way that they prepare things. My favorite part was the peas. The peas in London, mint peas. Never would have thought that that would be a thing, but I'm definitely going to try that out. So that was one of my favorites.
What about you, Ellie?
I think that my favorite part of the trip was the people. All of the people. From the people on the trip, I made so many great friendships from people that I had no clue were here before I went on this trip. So I've made friendships that I hope will last a lifetime, and memories, but also the people that I met in the countries. I remember there was one time we were on the train from France to Germany, and some German man asked me, where are you all from? And I said, we're from the Midwestern America, but my family is originally from Germany, so this was like a really interesting experience for me. And he told me, welcome home. And it was so sweet. And I had so many amazing experiences with people like that. Like me and another girl, we went to the Louvre and we met this girl in line who was from California, and we toured the entire Louvre with her. We spent 3 hours with her. It was so just like the people that I met on this trip are my favorite. I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life.
I'm right there with you both. The food was amazing, definitely something to write home about. And I also really loved getting to meet so many new people, including the both of you. I think you guys are just amazing. So I really appreciated that. And I think all three of us have German ancestry that's like not very far back. So Germany was definitely my favorite part of the trip. The food was awesome. Yeah. But I also really appreciated the connection and getting to learn a little bit more about my culture that I've not been the most tapped into the most of my life. So I agree. All of us will be graduating in a couple of days, and what a conclusion to our college experience, I might say. I'm really thankful to have had this experience with you guys. Certainly, many of us see world events differently now that we've seen and learned so much. Thanks for joining us in the studio.
Suitcases, passports, and an open mind. The students of Hanover's Multimedia Journalism course are headed to Europe. 14 students will spend 2.5 weeks in London, France, and Germany studying the work of World War II journalists. While enjoying the sights, sounds, smells, and taste of a new place, they will also be trying their own hand at reporting from the field in new cities. Senior Ayanda Sutu, a sociology major, says she is looking forward to learning more about new cultures.
I think it'll just be cool to just challenge myself. That's something that I think this trip will definitely do, and I think my classmates could say the same. And I think we'll be more well-rounded after this trip for sure.
Challenging indeed, but students will develop cultural awareness while making lifelong memories. Reporting from Hanover, I'm Ellee Bruns.